Good morning, everybody. Oh, it is a little echoey. I'm gonna have to get a little bit used to that. Mildly distracting, but I think I can handle it. I hope you all are having a good conference so far. Down just a little bit. That's too echoey for me. I hope you all are enjoying the conference so far. I'm here today to talk about conceptual integrity, and I have a quote on the board. I will contend that conceptual integrity is the most important consideration in system design. It is better to have a system omit certain anomalous features and improvements, but to reflect one set of design ideas than to have one that contains many good but independent and uncoordinated ideas. And that is from Fred Brooks in a book called Mythical Man Month. And in that book, he explores the relationship between complexity of a system and the purpose of a system, and how complexity can be interjected and not really impact the overall structure of the things that you're building, but conceptual integrity is really, really important to the development processes and fundamental business values of things. And so I love talking about conceptual integrity and mobile accessibility because it also relates back to things that people can take back and fundamentally kind of explore from a business and engineering valuation point of view without me having to talk about those things, because Fred Brooks does that way better than I possibly could. So I'm going to talk about conceptual integrity, but not so much the business side as what it is. And before I do that, I request an accommodation. If I start talking too fast, raise your hand and ask me to slow down. If you feel you have not understood me to the comprehension level you currently have energy for, that's a really important thing. Different people have different abilities to comprehend and different energy levels in the moment and all that stuff. Follow this process with me. Raise your hand and say, what did you mean by that? I think you meant blank. Help me understand where your comprehension is so that I can say, you're correct, or clarify the best I can by considering your point of view on the matter, and we'll repeat that process until we are both satisfied with our mutual comprehension or are out of energy in the moment. And this is an important thing for me, an explanation in a big old paragraph of text. I only usually include paragraphs of text when I am quoting people, but you'll never see a paragraph that's not a quote on a slide of mine. I hate text. But this one's important. I have a powerful mind that very recently, a couple years, broke. I'm missing 2-ish weeks of my life because the combination of mania and genius means going from calm and collected to getting lost in an amusement park at the mere mention of a wrong topic. This is documented by Cedar Point. Mutual comprehension is a sign of respect between all individuals. However, it is my opinion that when a neurodivergent individual is involved, mutual comprehension should be considered an accommodation. I'm a bipolar individual with autistic tendencies and a powerful mind. This turns me into a misunderstanding-causing wrecking ball. Mutual understanding is important between all, but if I'm the only one providing that energy, I don't know that I've been misunderstood most of the time. And that's just true. I can't change that. That's the very definition of being neurodivergent, is I think differently from you, and unless I have a ton of energy in that moment, I'm not going to see that you don't understand me. And why am I asking this? There's a lot of reasons, and it's an effective presentation. I'm really good at using that powerful mind to put myself in your point of view and be an effective presenter, but not everyone in my position is. So because I'm cognitively disabled and have a voice and the confidence to speak about it, that's a rare thing. Because artificial intelligence is a hot topic and presents all sorts of potential problems for the neurodivergent, and because now I have your attention and can effectively demonstrate the power of a few words and a little emptiness. And that's what mobile accessibility is about to me, is the simplicity that having a little device in your hand can bring to somebody's life. So let's go. Conceptual integrity. I'm going to talk a little bit about conceptual integrity. I'm going to do a really, really little bit of math at some point. I'm sorry about that. I'm analytical. I can't help it. But analytical things create foundational objective truth and help people understand. And then, actually, that last one, I lied. I tweaked my slides a little bit. I'm going to handle that in a different way. But I am going to talk about web versus mobile, and maybe a little bit about the architectural decisions of those tech giants, though I'm going to spend a little less time on it than anticipated. So let's talk conceptual integrity. In Mythical Man Month, Fred Brooks uses a term called conceptual integrity and relates it to software development, business models, methodologies, et cetera. If you're into the business side of this at all, I highly, highly recommend reading that book. It's really, really awesome. But it isn't an accessibility book. It's a business book. And sometimes conceptual integrity is interpreted as simplicity, but it's more than that. Conceptual integrity is the point where technical design and user experience flow consistently from a team developing with a common goal and purpose. A spaceship is not simple, but a spaceship has conceptual integrity. Everybody working on the NASA moon launch landing knew exactly what they were doing, why they were doing it, common goal, common understanding. And that common goal and common understanding, simple conceptual integrity goal, fly to the moon, motivates people behind a purpose that they can understand and put their hands on, whereas maybe a social network like Facebook has lost conceptual integrity in comparison to a social network like Twitter. And that's not good or bad. I'm not saying that Facebook is less accessible or that the spaceship could possibly be accessible, because there's different platforms and different ways that we can define an acceptable amount of conceptual integrity for a system. These are just examples to help you understand, and let's dig into one example a little bit more. Here's a menu that has conceptual integrity. Variations of meat on a tortilla. Really simple. Think about your supply chains for variations of meat on a tortilla. Meat and tortillas. What do you need to cook those things? You just need somebody capable of sticking meat on a grill or in a fryer or, heaven forbid, a microwave, depending on your choice of quote, quote, platform, fast food restaurant or sit-down restaurant, right? But it's simple. It's simple. The business processes are simple and has conceptual integrity. What would happen if we added eggs? Meat, eggs, we could still do that. It's not okay. It still has conceptual integrity, maybe a little bit less. We have to figure out how to cook those eggs, but if we had grills already, it doesn't add logistics to the system of the restaurant that we're trying to maintain. There's no real additional complexity besides maybe having to buy eggs. But what if we added pizza? Pizza would make our business model really complicated, and suddenly we'd have to figure out how to order and make ingredients that we didn't even have to worry about before. What's dough? How do we make dough? And heaven forbid you're on the fast food restaurant platform, and your high schoolers, you suddenly have to teach your high school employees to try and make pizza dough, and hopefully one of them worked at Jets at some point in their life, right? Like complicated, and you have to, from the top down, have trainings for making pizza dough, and you have to have logistics for ordering ovens, and it's hard. Pizza Bell or Kentucky Hut, would Kentucky Hut be a successful fast food restaurant? But also there's Chili's. The platform matters. Kentucky Hut is a fast food restaurant that cannot possibly exist because of the logistics and the prices of the things that are involved. Taco Hut wouldn't make enough money per the amount of things sold to justify being a fast food restaurant with the level of complexity that serving fried chicken and tacos and pizza can justify. It's just not something that makes sense. And in fact, in the 90s, if you remember, I remember driving around with my parents, and you would run into these half Taco Bell, half KFC places, and I was always excited. But when I got in there, it always felt weird to me. It's like the branding colors of red and purple are just colors that shouldn't exist side by side. It makes me uncomfortable, and let's face it, it sounds awesome in the moment, but ordering a piece of fried chicken and a taco is just a recipe for having to stop an hour later down the road. Right? It just doesn't make sense. But at Chili's, you're sitting down. You're getting served, and you're taking a little time, and you're there with maybe 13 or 14 people at a big table, and they need that diversity to satisfy the kids menu and all that stuff, but they can handle it. Their infrastructure can handle it. It has the conceptual integrity that their system requires because they're getting more money per plate. Every customer that walks in the door to Chili's is spending about $20. You can get out of Taco Bell for $1 if you try hard enough. When you're talking about conceptual integrity, you have to consider the platform and what your platform is capable of. So at this point, let's define conceptual integrity. Conceptual integrity is the point where technical design, your platform, and user experience flow, not being sick in an hour, flow consistently from a team developing with a common goal and purpose. Now this is enough about conceptual integrity. Let's talk about accessibility and how accessibility plays into that. Mobile accessibility and conceptual integrity are intimately related. Let's talk about why this is the case. And to do that, we have to talk about accessibility APIs just for a little bit. I can't help but get a little bit technical here, right? An accessibility API takes a view, a set of designed controls and images, and describes it in structured text. This is the thing that assistive technologies can take advantage of, right? And what I have on screen here is a view with a little YouTube icon. It's the Apple App Store. I like to pull examples from the big tech companies anytime I really can. It's the App Store, and you see the YouTube watch listen with the Get icon next to it. There's a little thing, sneak peek. There's an advertisement that's starting to peek up. And then I have these numbers next to it, and this is the focus order of the API, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Control 1 is text, YouTube, watch, listen. Control 2 is text, videos, music. Control 3 is button, get. Control 4 is heading, WWDC22. And Control 5 is text, get a sneak peek at iOS 16. And there's an important thing in accessibility APIs. There's this idea of role. And I've bolded the roles in this accessibility API for you, and I'm not going to talk a ton about it. I generally expect that people who come to CSUN have heard this term before, but the roles in our screenshot are text, button, heading, right? That's the role. It's a simple thing that communicates the function of the component. And if you're a screen reader user, you're not going to hear the word text, but you might hear the word button. And you might be able to navigate quickly to a heading. They create function. Roles create function. And the role of text is to be announced, and the role of heading is to be a landmark, and they do different things. And the importance of roles within an accessibility API allow users to allow us to create different behaviors. Button, activate with spacebar or enter. And I'm purposely talking about the web sphere here. Button, activate with spacebar or enter. Menu creates a useful series of shortcuts and interactions. You can use the arrow keys to navigate around a menu really expressively instead of just tapping the tab key I don't know how big mega menus are these days, but I'm picturing several hundred times, right? Those arrow keys are really important because they let you skip that. That's a role, right? Radio group together a set of controls listed, and there's tons and tons of roles. In fact, roles in the web, these are the roles that we have available in the web. And I would read all of them if I had enough time, but here's a few examples. Alert dialog, application, article, banner, button, cell, checkbox, column header, combo box, command, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to talk fast because this is going to take forever. There are 100 words up here. Not all of them are easy to say. I went fast on purpose. You don't have to raise your hand. I'm good. There are literally over 100 roles up here. These are the roles that are available in mobile. Tap, double tap, tap and drag, swipe right, swipe left, swipe up, swipe down, and landmark. And you might think, wait, I've used a screen reader before. There's more roles than that. Well, all of those roles that you're thinking of are informational. They don't do different things. A switch is not a switch because it behaves differently. A switch is a switch because it's a tappable thing with state. And so when we're talking about the combinations of behaviors that we can create, a switch in mobile isn't a different role. A menu in mobile isn't a different role. It's just a button that leads to another series of buttons. You can't have any more, you can't add fundamental inputs to a system. Not when it's a mobile device and the only thing that you can count on people being able to do with this thing is touch it. A keyboard is an extension on a mobile device. It's a third-party input device. You cannot plan on those hardware keys being present. So the number of roles that we actually have available to a mobile application developer is this. And you can do maybe some complicated gestures, but you're inventing things that don't exist, and that causes all sorts of accessibility problems, right? When we're talking about accessibility, we have to assume that these are the only roles that are available. And let's talk about other web versus mobile factoids. So we have that 80 roles versus 8 roles. We have 7 heading levels versus 1 heading level, and iOS maybe has the more heading levels coming out, but I haven't seen anybody use heading levels in a native mobile app effectively because they shouldn't be needed. 104 alphanumeric input keys, that's a lot. And that gives you a lot of power to do things. Escape, F1, F2, F3, F4, these are all things that if you wanted to, you could grab on and do something with. And mobile, keyboard is optional. We have no expected input besides our finger on a screen. Pointing device, accurate to 1 pixel in the web. A mouse even is more powerful than the pointer that we have on our phone because our thumbs are big and clumsy. The accuracy of a mouse is 1 pixel. The accuracy of your thumb is, I think the WCAG reference is like 44 or 24 in certain situations, right? It's huge. So that's like a 1,000% less area that you can cover with things because of the accuracy of your pointing device. These are not the same platform. And I've used the mobile apps have to be simple to be accessible argument for a long time, and that's still true, but I didn't really quite understand why, and now I do, and that's what this presentation is about. Quantifying complexity, web versus mobile. There's an idea in statistics about factorials being able to create the potential set of combinations that exist. And not all of these combinations are useful, but 80 factorial times infinity, infinity being your value propositions. Remember, conceptual integrity isn't related to your application. Conceptual integrity is related to the purpose that your application is being developed for. There are an infinite combinations of purposes that applications can be developed for, but there's only 80 factorial combinations of roles that we can use. And maybe some of those aren't invalid, but it's a lot bigger than 8 factorial. numbers of roles. In fact, that number, the difference between those numbers is so large that it is more atoms than exist in the entirety of our solar system. That's a lot. More atoms than the entirety of our solar system is the amount of more complexity that the web can support than mobile does. And that's just math. That's just true. And then there's subdomains. We haven't even started talking about subdomains yet. We're just talking about the stuff that you can do on a singular web page, let alone the tools that we have to organize them. Different teams in a web development organization can contribute to the same domain while existing within smaller organizations within the company. You can't split up a mobile application like that without creating the mechanisms to do that by yourself. And at that point, it becomes inaccessible. So use Amazon as an example, right? When Amazon, great company for accessibility, right? Remember, this is the web, and the definition of conceptual integrity when your potential complexity is more atoms than exist in the universe. This is a great website. But they have different business units up here. You have shopping, the main thing, but you also have One Medical and Clinic and customer service and bestsellers and Prime and new releases and music and books and registries. And each of those things can exist within a different subdomain and have their own kind of style and appearance and can hook to their own different systems and things. And the web is built to support that. Mobile isn't. Conceptual integrity on the web. Conceptual integrity is not a fundamental requirement for an accessible website because there are numerous architectural mechanisms the web can lean on to structure and organize content. We do have subdomains. We do have 7 heading levels. We do have mega menus, right? And that's really, really powerful concept. This idea of the mega menu is amazing and can do all sorts of complicated things. We don't have that on mobile. Conceptual integrity on mobile, conceptual integrity is a fundamental requirement for an accessible mobile application because the application is the only meaningful way of separating business units without complicating the development process, exhausting mobile structural design mechanisms, stressing mobile business models, taxing agile development processes, and jeopardizing the ability of your engineers to structure content in an accessible manner. As a mobile development team, if you hand me a business purpose without conceptual integrity, the entire process falls apart. And I'm going to stand here and justify the accessibility side of that. But if you don't take my word on all those other things, go read Fred Book's Mythical Man Month because he describes it way, way better than I ever possibly could. So, conclusion, and I'm kind of purposely keeping this short because I like discussion, I like questions, I like people talking back and forth with me. But the conclusion is don't turn your mobile app into Kentaco Hut. Nobody wants to eat at Kentaco Hut. I remember Kentaco Hut being a thing when I was a kid, and it just didn't work. It felt weird, it felt wrong. And when you are designing and building your web properties, one of the common things that I see is for people to take their concept of a website and then just try and turn that thing into a mobile app, and then they come back and they're surprised. Oh, the money's not there. Oh, the business value just doesn't exist. Why is our mobile app not sending us customers and generating us revenue? It's because you turned your website into a mobile app, and that doesn't work. You have to turn most websites that I run into, you have to turn that website into like 5 to 10 mobile apps. Google Drive. Look at Google Drive. When Google wanted to turn Google Drive into a website, they didn't create Google Drive. They actually did, but they created slides and sheets and things that in their website are all attached to the same domain and part of a relatively consistent experience they separated those experiences, and that has dramatic benefits for all sorts of users. I imagine that the technology to do spreadsheets on mobile, for example, is pretty complicated, and Google Docs has a really good, an awesome text editor that actually feels pretty good to use on mobile, and Slides has a specific interface for swiping back and forth, and those things are big. Those things are big and complicated, and if you tried to group them together into the same application, your download size would increase to weird, absurd levels that would mean that you don't want to, and you lose that menu, that mode of navigation. Suddenly the menu has to serve the purposes of all of those applications, and maybe even the team that's designing that sees some of those complexities and starts taking little bits and pieces away from the Sheets experience, because that Sheet experience, if you factor it in a certain way, might help your Docs experience in a way that satisfies an engineer's need to keep the download side of that application as small as possible, even though the fundamental problem that engineer is having keeping the download size as small as possible is the business size telling that engineer that he's wrong for wanting to split your application into multiple applications. That is a business problem, not an engineering problem. That is a conceptual integrity problem. And that's the whole point of this, is that it's not just about simplicity. It's not just about that mathematical calculation of the complexity that can exist on mobile devices and web devices. We could potentially take our mobile app and expend it across thousands and thousands of little screens stretching off in workflows that get complexity of spider webs, and they already have that a little bit, but imagine how complicated that thing would be if you had Amazon packed into a single application. The download size of that would be absurd. And that's the point, is that the fundamental thing that mobile applications need is not simplicity. They do need to be simple, but the fundamental thing they need is conceptual integrity, because all of those individuals and interactions that go into developing that application, those little process points, break apart. And conceptual integrity is an inherent part of the way Apple and Android developed their system. Little business units, little bits of value that deliver quick value in your pocket on the go. And there's a ton of reasons, like attention span and things, that I'll talk to you after if you want. I want to get onto the discussion part, but thank you. If you have any questions, if you have any discussion, please, just raise your hand. I love conversation. Let me read my slide real quick. The large organization will consist of many semi-autonomous units, which we may call quasi-firms. Each of them will have a large amount of freedom to give the greatest possible chance of creativity and entrepreneurship. That is the value of conceptual integrity. Fred Books, go ahead.
I love this. It relates a lot to conversations we have with our clients about don't build a Swiss Army knife, build a paring knife.
Great example too.
And but I'm curious, when we do a lot of development in cross-platform frameworks, Flutter and .NET MAUI and React Native and things like that, as opposed to the Swift and Kotlin kind of development. And I'm curious, when you start looking at leveraging platform-specific APIs as opposed to kind of the common denominator things, how do you extend conceptual integrity in a way that kind of is maintained as you start building something that supports different roles and different implementations across platforms, and also the complexity of whether those frameworks support specific accessibility considerations at the platform native level?
That's an awesome question, and that relates to the relationship between simplicity and conceptual integrity. A spaceship can have conceptual integrity because there's a common purpose there. And conceptual integrity relates back to purpose. But also, if you read Mythical Man Month, relates back to the expertise that your team has available and the number of people on your team and the structure of that team and all of those things. And so the difference between Flutter and a native application is if somebody came to you and said, for example, on a website, we want your website, we want to turn Uber into a website. How would you do that? Sell GPS devices that send a REST API request to somewhere so that your website can, that's the thing that comes to my mind. And now suddenly you're a hardware distributor. That doesn't have conceptual integrity, right? And so what you really are thinking of is simplicity and complexity. An application can do complex things. Uber is a complex system, but the phone provides most of the difficult logistical business complicated things. We don't have to come up with solutions for getting GPS coordinates onto our laptop. We don't have to solve for the fact that somebody's going to shut their laptop off before they get on that car, and so that GPS device now has to be the primary mode of communicating information to the driver instead of your phone, which is on in the back seat while you're texting on it while it's driving, and there's this constant location update. And then Uber can rely on that communication to know that somebody's got there safe and that there haven't been problems, and there's a safety element to it. And Uber would have to solve all of those problems. And those are problems that are not unsolvable, but that greatly, greatly complicate what is actually a pretty simple business model. Make sense?
Question over here,
Yeah.
and then I'll get to you.
Sorry, I'm not in charge of picking whose questions I ask. I got my bad. Nope, perfect, go ahead.
I love the idea of simplicity and the idea of possibly multiple mobile apps. And I'm thinking about how to explain this to stakeholders and business people and things like that. And the only thing that came to mind was to actually just go ahead and create maybe a bunch of prototypes of how it would look and show them maybe. So I was wondering if you had any suggestions on how to do that, or how to sort of like get their buy-in on this idea.
Yeah, can I ask you a question in return real quick that you answer to your comfort level? What business sector are you in?
I work for DocuSign, and so, SaaS business.
What I would say is find the examples. Don't prototype them. Prototypes are only really, really effective if the prototype is truly enough to create empathy with the problem, and stakeholders don't give a F about your prototypes most of the time, unless you work really, really closely with them. And what I mean by that is they're not going to take the time to comprehend the problems that you're illustrating, because actually that thing at the beginning that I said, they don't have the energy to, the mental energy. You have to communicate that within a way that's accessible to them. And when you show a prototype, it's the back and forth that you are going to need with that stakeholder to create true mutual comprehension and understanding over a prototype is going to waste your time in the same way that not having an application with conceptual integrity would waste your time. What you do is you find examples in the wild that closely suit your examples. Amazon is an example that I love to use because I consider both Amazon's website and their mobile applications to be accessible. And so you can see how they split it up. So identify, maybe do those prototypes in your head, but then find those prototypes in the wild so that your stakeholders can take that quote prototype, the example that you shared, and collate it with some business understanding of, oh, That's what their customers get. Amazon Prime Video customers get a better experience because they are holding an application that is just designed to be a video player and just designed to do those searches and talk about those value propositions from the point of view of an example that is as close to your business need as you can get. Make sense? Absolutely. Go for it.
Yes, let's say for a variety of technical and political reasons, you have a Kintako hut.
Yep.
You want to make
What's your business sector?
I work for Costco. But let's imagine I want to make it more like a Chili's. So, for example, a large part of our app is web views. But taking like your slide of all of the things we have available for us on web and all of the ones that we have for mobile, would it be possible to like use a simplified version of the web view that we have and to just intentionally take the things that the mobile also has to make it more Chili's-like instead of the Kintako hut? Or should we just burn it to the ground?
That's a really good question. And what it is a process. It's a process because I think if you want to ask, let's ask two different questions about accessibility and one about people. And one of the accessibility questions be, can we make that thing compliant? And the answer is yes. It might be a cluster bleep, but you can do it. Can you make that accessible in a way that it would be accessible to me? I am a mobile accessibility expert because I'm a cognitively disabled individual and I like mobile because of that. No, you can't make that an experience that I would appreciate. That's just truth. But what you can do is think, what is the future and how do we drive to that without going back to our stakeholders who are going to not care about your opinion anymore if you ask them to burn that to the ground, right? Like you have your own limitations to drive progress. And so paint the vision of the reality that should exist by walking your stakeholders either literally or virtually through the store and showing them that when you walk up to the jewelry counter in Costco, there's a certain experience that's different than when you walk up to the meat counter in Costco, than when you walk up to the furniture aisle. And they organize their store in a really, really specific way because the experiences that people want when they're shopping for those different things are different, and start pushing for that vision of the meat counter having a specific application where you can go and get your number so that you know what your order is. But maybe the furniture app has some shipping and logistics concerns that it needs to solve. And just like those people at Costco that go through and think about those individual experiences, you need technical teams thinking about the different experiences and challenges and doing all that within one application. If you think about really delivering equitable experiences to people that want to experience Costco from the outside because they're too anxious to leave their home because Costco has too many people and the only reason they've ever shopped at Costco is because their sister dragged them there. If you were going to create an equitable Costco experience for me, and you're not ready to think like that, you're going to fail. Get people thinking like that. It will evolve that direction, as long as you do so with empathy and that mutual comprehension and understanding. One more. I think we got time for one more. Awesome. Y'all were great. Thank you very much. And feel free to come chat with me.